Thank you, Sam. It's my pleasure to share with you some perspectives and thoughts on how we addressed COVID-19 by repurposing drugs. So I'd like to begin with an overview of traditional drug development. You know, there's many stages early on with animal testing, cell cultures, et cetera. But on the right-hand side, you see a graphic about drug repurposing. And the beauty of drug repurposing is that you can go directly to a phase 2 human clinical trial based on data from the originator of the NDA. Now, this is a process that's been put together, was part of the Hatch-Waxman Act back in the 80s, and it was a pathway that was accepted by the FDA, allowing for fewer clinical trials to be required for an NDA, and also for shortening the time and reducing the costs. And you'll see here over the past 2 decades, there's been a continuous growth in NDA approvals using the 505(b)(2) regulatory pathway, which references the data and safety data from the originator of the drug for the NDA. As we know, the cost of developing a new drug continues to escalate. This particular chart is talking about how many billions of dollars you need to spend in order to get, a new drug to the market. And you see that over time, that the output per billion dollars spent has continually decreased, which is one of the reasons for the popularity of the repurposing, is because when you're repurposing a drug, a lot of the cost and the risks of the drug development has already been surpassed, which is, according to Craig Wegner from AstraZeneca, this is a huge benefit. You're able to look at a long history of a drug on the market, and you have a good overview of the safety, so that reduces the risk of failure in a clinical trial due to safety. And of course, it reduces the cost because you're going directly to a phase 2 study. Here's an overview of some of the FDA submissions for 505(b)(2) from the time period of 2013 to 2018. And here we're looking at just over 300 different types of submissions. The vast majority of those are formulations or other differences. Our new dosage type is also popular. And the 505(b)(2) pathway is not exclusive to any particular therapeutic area. And here you see, a wide spectrum of different diseases and disease areas where the drugs have been approved, going from anti-infectives, cardiovascular, allergy, all the way down to urology, et cetera. So it's applicable to any therapeutic area, and it's a way where you can, again, get to the market for less risk, less time, less money. Some people believe that repurposing has the same potential to see blockbuster status as the de novo derived drug. And in this particular chart, you'll see different drugs. In the first column, it's the brand name of the drug, and the original indication follows in the next column. And then the new indication and which company was involved with it, and then what the annual sales are. Probably one of the most known repurposing drugs was Viagra, which was originally for angina and ended up for erectile dysfunction. But even Pfizer did repurposing for the same product, the Viagra product, into a new brand name, and they used it for pulmonary arterial hypertension. And that particular new indication garnered over $500 million in annual sales. So if you think about what would a successful launch be for a 505(b)(2) product, I'm just going to share a few of them as examples. Ravicti is a drug that offered greater dosage convenience over the reference drug, Bufenil, and that particular product was able to generate over $800 million in the period from 2013 to 2018. Another example is Vasostrict. This was the first vasopressin injection on the market, and this was able to generate sales of $1.2 billion or $1.2 billion by the end of 2018. And another example would be Bendecta, and this one was a modified dosage form that provided greater dosing convenience than the reference drug. And this drug approached $2 billion in sales in the time period between 2016 and 2018. Pharmaceutical Executive recently had an article about the use of the 505(b)(2) pathway, and they pointed to 3 key factors to success. One of them was that you have strong clinical data from the reference product, which results in the average time to file approval of a 505(b)(2) product range from just 6 months for those under priority review to 10 months for standard review. So referencing the clinical data from the original product saves a lot of time. Another factor would be a clear and meaningful understanding of how it differentiates itself. So market exclusivity, depending upon how you establish your new indication, could range from 3 years for a new formulation or indication up to 7 years for an orphan drug designation. And many of the drugs that are being repurposed are looking at orphan drug designations. And the third factor is that, to have the appropriate marketing communication plan, in general, it requires less sales and detailing efforts for the product that's going to be repurposed. And with the right planning and strategy, you have an opportunity to provide for a significant return on investment for the sales effort. As I mentioned earlier, the FDA completely supports repurposing. They recently had a conference in Rockville, Maryland that was supported by the FDA, the NIH, and the Reagan-Udall Foundation. It was a 2-day program dedicated exclusively to repurposing off-patent drugs and addressing some of the research and regulatory challenges. Which brings me to the focus of this presentation, which really is talking about SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19, the pandemic that has recently plagued us. And the question was, why did the pharmaceutical industry embrace repurposing? And the answer is that I've been involved with several reviews of different grant applications, and virtually all of the grants that came from BARDA or any other division of the NIH, HHS, they were looking for new products or technology that in the short term, and their definition of short term is 1 to 6 months, can be rapidly deployed to combat the pandemic. And they stated in these applications, long-term solutions, and their definition of long-term is 6 months and beyond, are not requested at this time. So the only option that was available was to take a look at drugs that are already approved and see if they could be repurposed. And that is exactly what happened. And here you'll see a schematic of the virus and how it behaves and how it penetrates the cell. And you'll see that the different approaches with different drugs being repurposed. The green arrow pointing left is about the chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, which was one of the early hopes for dealing with the coronavirus. On the bottom pointing to the right, you see remdesivir, which was approved for emergency use only for patients that were in the hospital and on a respirator. So that was the early success that was shown. Unfortunately, the FDA removed the emergency utilization authorization for chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, so that's no longer an option for physicians to help with this patient population. But I came across this interesting article about some research in India that shows that maybe hydroxychloroquine could be used to treat type 2 diabetes. So maybe the stockpile of hydroxychloroquine that we have can be used for something else. And then most recently, you perhaps have heard about the UK study on dexamethasone. And this is a quote from one of the newspaper articles in the Daily Mail. And the coronavirus survivor reveals that, he's got this miracle drug that saved his life. And in this study that they had, they were showing that they reduced the risk of dying up to 35% in ventilated patients. So repurposing works, and it's good that this is an option that we can now consider when dealing with new threats like the coronavirus. There's been an amazing amount of work done, and think about it, in less than 6 months, more like 3 months, everybody has been motivated in the drug development community across all sectors of the industry large pharma, small pharma, biotech, small molecules. Everybody's trying, anything possible to try to get a treatment for COVID-19. And it's just been a remarkable movement of people and industries trying to come together in order to solve the problem in such a short period of time. It's quite impressive. And according to some research, they're looking at the global market for drug repurposing that could reach over 30 billion by the end of this year. Of course, this is a different type of a year, so who knows how the projections will work out. Maybe it'll be larger than that based on trying to deal with COVID-19. But I think the beauty of the repurposing, and I think the take-home message is that it allows you to reduce risk, allows you to reduce the time to the market, and it allows you to reduce the cost of drug development in comparison to traditional pathways. I would encourage you, if you're interested, to join the repurposing community. There's an organization called 505(b)(2) Platform. It's a non-profit organization, and this is their website. And this is a group of people that are interested in ensuring that this is a viable opportunity for drug development in the future. And there's also a LinkedIn group called the Drug Repurposing Collaborative Network, where individuals with similar interests can come together and share ideas about how we can address some of the challenges that are faced. I'd like to end with a polling question. And the question is, are you or have you ever been involved with repurposing a drug? And if yes, why did you take that path? Was it to save time or money or reduce risk? And if the answer is no, then what are some of your concerns in terms of not considering repurposing a drug? And you see the choices that are there. So if you will, Sam, I'll pass it to you.
So we have the first portion of the question: are you or have you ever repurposed a drug? There are two options, yes or no. And I'll give the audience an additional 10 seconds for this question. Then we'll follow it up. For those that check yes, there will be a follow-up question coming afterwards. But let's display the results for yes and no first. In 5 seconds, I will be closing it. 3, 2, 1. So, John, it looks like, 11. Many people have.
That's good. It's a good distribution.
It is indeed. And let me follow that up with John's second question. So for those that have, please select your reason why: to save time, to reduce risk, or to reduce costs. You have 3 options, ladies and gentlemen. I see people coming in now for those that answered yes to the first part. I'll give you, the audience, an additional 10 seconds before I close this poll. And John, it looks like the ones that answered yes, majority of them were looking to reduce risk. And for those that answered no to the first part, please select your primary reason. Was it concern with IP, concerns with generic substitution? Okay, I'll give the audience an additional 10 seconds for those that answered no to the first part. These options. And John, I think their major concern was with IP, indeed.
Okay. Thank you, Sam, and thank you to everyone who participated in the polling. I appreciate that. Sam, do we have any questions from the audience?
So far, it looks like we don't have any questions from the audience so far. But I know a lot of people will be emailing us afterwards asking for your slide deck and with questions, so definitely we'll forward that info to you.
Okay. Very good. So I'm going to stop sharing now and give it back to you, Sam.